So this will be a preview video of probably a short series of videos to come at some point in time. I'm definitely going to tackle this one. I got this radio on eBay. It was said to have problems, whatnot, and I could see it. I don't know if I want to say the seller was trying to hide damage, but I kind of get that feeling. Definitely didn't state it in the listing, that's for sure, and had to pack, because this is a power supply and the speaker, but it's really heavy. But he had that sitting on the right side of the top, and I think he did that because he was trying to hide the Atlantic Ocean. And what I mean by that is, looks a little wavy, doesn't it? Yeah, it's kind of hard to see in person, but it's crumpled. And if you look really close, and I've got it unscrewed right now because it only had 2 screws in the top. Yeah, all the screws are wrong. So yeah, people have been in this thing, obviously. But yeah, when I unscrewed it and pulled off, it really goes boing. It's like a spring. Advantage here is it's a piece of flat sheet metal that can easily be straightened out. Just need to basically take it out of the hammer and dolly and just work it out, you know, shrinker stretcher hammers and get it flattened back out. But it can be done. So, you know, I wasn't worried about that. He had it turned on in the pictures and the Nixie tubes light. Now, I'm not going to turn it on and show you the Nixie tubes lighting because it's got problems on the inside. But this is a perfect example of why you do not buy tube type equipment, plug it into a wall, and turn it on. It just doesn't get any more clear than once you pop the top cover of this radio, why you should not do that. So let's remove this spring here. You can see, boink, it pops up in the back. Yeah, I definitely have some, yeah, you can see the big wave here, and it's crumpled in at the back, and indents of whatever. Yeah, I don't know. It's, like I say, it's flat sheet metal bent at 90 degrees. But there's the first indication we've got problems, and no, that's not a rat's nest. Something exploded in this radio. And that's kind of the point of this. Now, for me, not a problem. I'll be able to fix this. Like I say, it turns on. And I'm not going to turn it on, because like I say, it's got some serious problems. We might have some flames shoot out of this thing if I tried to power it up right now. And the reason being, if you look down in here, because when I unboxed it, I heard something rattling around inside the radio. And what was rattling around inside the radio was a can, an electrolytic capacitor can. And where's the rest of that capacitor? Right there. That's the base of it. And here's the insides of it here and here. And you saw what was stuck to the inside of the top cover. And the entire, everything back here is just covered with paper and aluminum foil residue. Yeah, there's more chunks of it down in here. So that is why you never, ever, ever turn on an old electronic device. Just power it up. You know, you can try to bring it up slowly on a Variac. Honestly, I don't even suggest doing that. They're old caps. You can try to reform them. They're still old caps. Once the oil dries up out of these capacitors, it's not like you can inject new oil into it. And once these plates, this aluminum foil, because there's two layers of aluminum in here. There's actually one here the paper's still stuck to. Here's the other layer, and it's separated by a sheet of paper. Okay, that's your dielectric material and being impregnated with the dielectric oil. But that oil dries out over time. This one, it's, you know, the paper doesn't get any drier than that. Now this thing may have had some oil left in it, but yeah, it went up in vapors when this thing exploded. And that's what happens. As capacitors get old, the oil starts to dry out. These plates start to oxidize because they're just aluminum, okay? And as that aluminum starts to oxidize, it starts to pierce holes through this paper. And the paper, especially if it's gotten to the point where the paper's starting to absorb moisture, so you know the oil's been basically evaporated out, moisture starts to come in. Well, of course, water is conductive. But the aluminum starts to oxidize, it'll start to pierce holes through this paper, and then the two plates start to short out. So slowly over the years, your capacitors turn into those things, resistors. And what do resistors do? They get hot. Well, these are sealed. Now this can does not have a vent notch in the top of it, most of your modern, at least good quality capacitors, you'll see a crimp line of some sort of design. Sometimes it's just an X, could be a straight line. And really, really big can capacitors, they'll have an actual, like a vent plug in the bottom of them. But that's what that vent plug is there to do. If a capacitor ever does fail, it's meant to prevent this from happening. Eventually what will happen is the top of the can will split open. It's to prevent these from doing just what this thing did, turning into a shotgun round. This thing launched out and hit the side of the, it would have hit the inside of the cover. And like I said, you can just see, I mean, it exploded shit just all over the place. So there's just a really quick preview. And what this is a Robyn Digital 500. I don't think I even mentioned that in the video. It's what it actually is. It's a Robyn Digital 500. Yes, it's got some cosmetic issues here. That glue is actually gooey. Might have been tape. You can hear that. My finger sticks to it. That's good. I can get that off. There's some dried glue here. It looks like some nitwit tried to glue this back on. And it's smushed out a little bit here. So I'll have to get this front trim piece popped off and clean that off really good. But overall, the main parts I'm concerned about, like I say, top cover, that can be straightened out. The main stuff here can either be cleaned up or is in good condition. Nixie tubes, that's why I had to have it. Now, I have one of these already. It just doesn't say Robyn on it. It says SBE, because yes, SBE, like Robyn, didn't just sell CB radios. They sold some amateur radios. Now, the SBE was an SB. God, I'd almost have to go out and... It's been so many years since I saw mine. That one's packed away. Need to get that out. I need to build a big building for a display one of these days, but I think that's what, an SB36, I think it is. Like I say, it's been so many years since I saw it, I can't remember. But it's the same radio, different face decal. That's basically the only difference. Internally, they're the same. But, yeah, so this is just a warning video. Not going to be any repairs. I just wanted to really quick show it. I can see down here there's a ceramic. I can't even see it. Need to stand up right here. You can't see it either because there's a light bulb in the way. In camera view, that capacitor right there is not even attached. I get the feeling somebody took that out trying to do some frequency adjustments. But otherwise, it looks fairly complete. Obviously, it has all original capacitors. I don't really see a lot of other work other than that one capacitor lifted there. Haven't even pulled the bottom off yet. But yeah, it's definitely worth restoring. You don't see a lot of these. And usually when you do, you'll see SBEs instead of these. I've seen more of the SBEs than I had the Robyn Digital 500s. But yeah, I'll be doing a restoration series on this radio. This, of course, basically just speaker and a power supply. So big chunk of metal in here. This is where all the weight is because this has your power transformer in it. And a large row of 500 volt can capacitors in here. The speaker grill on this, actually, rather conveniently, the glue is dried out, so... Makes it easy for cleaning this up. It's already off, and I can get that glued back on. But, so, if you have an old tube radio, for God's sakes, don't just go plugging it into a wall outlet, and we'll see if it's got some life in it, because you may find out, yeah, it's got some life all right, and it's going to go off with a bang, and that bang is going to be an electrolytic capacitor when it lets loose. Now, luckily, in this one, it was a very small, I think that thing's only like 25 volt. Yeah, 25 volt at 220 microfarads. It was a very low voltage cap that went off. But if one of the ones in here, because I think that's 3 capacitors, 3 dual section capacitors at 47 microfarads at 500 volts. If one of those things had went off, that could have gone off with a tremendous, not just a bang, it would have been a boom. One hell of a boom. But that's why you should, at the very least, bring up an old tube radio on a variac transformer very slowly. Ideally, you should do what I do. I get an old tube radio. Yes, I know everybody wants to just plug it in and see if it works. But take my word for it, that's the last thing you should do, really. It's old. The caps need to be changed. It's got tubes in it. you know, it's an antique. Even old solid state stuff nowadays, I recommend not even plugging in, you know, old vintage solid state stuff. Before, the first thing you should do, change all the caps. Save yourself an explode, because that's a mess. That's the problem. One of these things goes nuclear and explodes. You've got to clean all that residue out of here. The paper's not the problem. This, and luckily this was, you know, this one's got some fairly thick aluminum plates. Some of these things, though, the aluminum's very thin. I mean, like, way thinner than aluminum foil. And when they explode, you'll have tiny fragments of little specks of aluminum foil sprayed all throughout whatever it is, an amplifier, a radio, a stereo, whatever. You've got to get all of that out now, because if you don't, it's metal, it's conductive. You could have a heck of a an electronic spark show going. You know, all those little tiny fragments of aluminum foil shorting out and causing all kinds of more damage. So yeah, do yourself a favor. Don't plug in all electronics before you change the electrolytic caps. At the very least, bring it up very, very slowly over a period of a day on a variac transformer. So there you go. There's a preview. At some point, when I get some time, this is definitely my next project for myself. I haven't done a good project for myself in probably a year, probably a year and a half. I think this one, yeah, I love boat anchors, and this is definitely a boat anchor. You know, you tie this power supply here to your feet. Trust me, you'd sink to the bottom of the bottom of a lake or ocean, whatever. But yeah, so definitely expect within the next few months, I'm going to restore this one, because I can deal with the cosmetics damage that it has. Looks fairly complete. Yeah, it's got a blown up cap, but yeah, other than that, it just basically looks like it needs a cap job, and then if there's any other troubleshooting needs done, I'll go through that. So there you go, a preview video and a warning.